Hi, this is Dovid Orlofsky, and welcome to the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. And whether you're watching with our friends over at Torah Anytime, or wherever you watch or listen to your podcasts, I'm still on Spotify. I said I'm not leaving until Joe Rogan does, so I'm still there. For those of you who don't appreciate the reference, it really doesn't make any difference. It's not important. But I just like to be topical, if at all possible. So there you have it. In any event, wherever you are watching and listening to your podcast, we are on Spotify, by the way. That might get us thrown off of Nucky Radio. I don't know. But right now, we're still on most of our forums. Wherever you watch or listen to your podcast, we're always happy to have you along. And we're talking about the Mishkan, because nobody likes to talk about the Mishkan. I think I mentioned this, no? Moshe Rabbeinu says in Parshas Kisisa, Mocheni no me'sifrecha asher kosafta, erase me from your book. And so Hashem, because of those words, ends up erasing him from one parsha of the Torah. Which parsha? Tetzaveh. Why parsha Tetzaveh? So some people give the answer because he wrote, Asher kosavta, erase me from the book that you've written. So it had to be the parsha before. My answer is, if you have to be erased from a parsha in the Torah, wouldn't you pick Tetzaveh? Nobody wants to learn it. So that's what we're here. We're here to conquer one of the three great fears that the average Orthodox Jew has. The number one is, of course, fleshophobia, which is the fear of becoming fleshiks. The second one is benchophobia, having to bench. That's why people say, do you want to wash? He goes, no, I'll have crackers, I'll have rice cake. And the third is mishkanophobia, so that when it comes up to anything to deal with the Mishkan, everyone's eyes glaze over. And so I'm here to solve mishkanophobia. That's why I'm here today, to try to help you find meaning in everything that goes on with it. Yechiel Truma, take from you, for me, truma, donation. But it's really for you. Yechiel li, take for me, from you. Right? Give me from you. So you have to take it. It doesn't say v'nosan. It says v'yikhu. Take it from you. You need the Mishkan, whether you realize it or not. Yeah. When I was in Los Angeles, I was a bacher there. And we were learning and we were working in the yeshiva and doing different things. And Rishaya Cohen used to make a shalashudis for all of the older single bachurim, and he'd say a shmuz. And he would have to be mizarez us, because Shabbos afternoon, you're not exactly in yeshiva, you're sort of working, helping out, doing different things, you're kind of tired, and he would mamish go and round us up. So one time he says to us, Shai Cohen, he says, it's not really a cover for me that I have to drag all of you people in to listen to me give a shmooze. I really am not doing this for me. I'm doing it for you. Yeah, the tendency is to think, we're doing him a favor, we're showing up. No, he was doing us a favor by speaking to us, and he wanted to make that clear. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Yechiel li, take it from you. Take it. Don't give it to me. I don't need. Take it. Which brings us to an absolutely fascinating small Rashi in Pashas V'Yakel. Moshe Rabbeinu gathers together all the people on the day after Yom Kippur when he comes down. He came down on Yom Kippur with the second Luchos. The next day, he assembles the people, V'Yakel, pulls everyone together, and he says, okay, we're going to build a Mishkan. Here's what I need: gold and silver and copper and wood and stones and tachash skins and red dyed ram skins. Gives the whole list, and everybody goes out, and everybody brings it to the point that Moshe Rabbeinu had to say, "Please stop. We have too much." Now, I think that was probably the last building campaign in history where that happened. Because I know there are certain shuls, when you're born, as soon as you join the shul, you have to pay 3 building funds. The building that they built in the 1960s, the one that they refurbished in the 1980s, and the new one that they built in the 2000s. Yeah, and you have to pay all those building funds. Now, you'd think by now they would have paid it off. You're joining, you have to pay all the building funds from all the times. Yeah. So, but this time it was like too much. Stop already. Stop, I have too much. Genug. How much gold can I handle over here? It's enough. We got plenty. And then they talk about everything that's going on, and suddenly it says, and the nesi'im brought the avnei miluim and the avnei shaya. And nesi'im is written choser. Written choser. There's a yud missing. So that it's possible to read it as nesi'im. That they didn't bring it, they just schlepped it. Now, nesi'im is also a word for clouds, because it says the Anani HaKavod dropped the jewels, came down from the clouds, and the nesi'im just picked them up and carried them. So, nesi'im. Not nesi'im, nesi'im. Yeah. So, what's the significance? They lose a letter from their name. I remember when I was learning in Artscroll, 1975, Chavetz Chaim. So, Moshe Chait, he said, it can be a terrible busha to lose a letter from your name. At the time, Gerald Ford was president of the United States. So you imagine, leave out a letter and instead you call him President Ferd. Yeah. So it's one of those little Yiddish jokes there. Yeah. But we take nesi'im and we turn them into nesi'im, which is a nice way of saying schleppers. Yeah. What does that mean exactly? So, let's get the chronology. Chronology is always important. Moshe Rabbeinu comes down on Yom Kippur with the luchos. The next day he assembles the people. This is Yud Aleph. And he says, okay, here's all the stuff we need. The people bring it over the next 3 days. Moshe says, stop. And the next day, they start construction. They start the construction. And, by the way, that would be Sukkos. And says the Vilna Gaon, Sukkos, the Gemara argues whether the Sukkos are because of the little structures that they made to live in the Midbar, or whether it's referring specifically to the Ananei HaKavod. In which case, what would be the significance? So he says the Vilna Gaon, as soon as they started building the Mishkan, the Ananei HaKavod came back. So it's celebrating the return of the Ananei HaKavod. In any event, they worked diligently. As the Chazal say, Moshe Rabbeinu, Mesil Sharm speaks about this in Zrizis. Moshe Rabbeinu was praised for the fact that he moved things along very quickly and efficiently, as did Shlomo Melech when he was building the Beis HaMikdash. And the Mishkan was finished in record time. They started on Sukkot, and they finished on the 25th of Kislev, which one day, of course, would become Hanukkah. Because when they finished the Mishkan, one could argue they should have put it up right away. And in fact, many of the Yidden did want to do that so that they would get the full kapara of what they were waiting for. And he says, no, we have to wait till Rosh Chodesh Nisan. That's the time to put it up. Yeah. The creation of the world and the creation of this small world will mirror each other. So, Machlekes Rabbi Eliezer and be sure whether the world was created on Rosh Chodesh Nisan or on Rosh Chodesh Tishrei. But whatever happens, each one of them agrees something happened on these days. So the Mishkan was going to go up on Rosh Chodesh Nisan. And so Hanukkah would one day get its own holiday. Yeah, no one gets forgotten. But they did this in record time. From Sukkot till Hanukkah is 70 days. In 70 days, they had it all done. And And they wanted to put it up. And Moshe says, no, we're not putting it up yet. You have to wait. So finally comes the last week of Adar, and Moshe says, now we practice. Put it up and take it down. Put it up, take it down. Put it up and take it down. And on the 8th day, says Rashi, Yom HaShmini, which was Rosh Chodesh Nisan, they put it up for good. I should say they put it up for real. For good would imply it never moved, but they kept taking it apart and moving it. But fine. They put it up that it was going to stay. And the nesi'im show up on that day. And they say, we want to give wagons and oxen to pull them in order to carry everything with the Mishkan. So he says, well, I wasn't instructed by Kodesh Baruch Hu. They're like, check with him. Hashem says, take them. And then they come and they say, we would like to bring special korbanos to dedicate the Mizbeach. Says, well, what kind of korbanos? Well, shlamim and olos. Okay, anyone can bring a shlamim and an ola, right? An ola is a burnt offering. Gets completely burnt on the Mizbeach. That's why when you make aliyah, they call you an ola, because you're completely consumed. Yeah. A shlamim is a peace offering, because from shalom, because everybody gets a piece. The Kohen gets a piece. The Mizbeach gets a piece. You get a piece, yeah. Anyone can bring those. And we want to bring korban. So you can't just bring korban. Wait, and we also want to bring ketores, incense. You can't bring incense, and if you do bring incense, it has to be brought on the inside Mizbeach, the golden Mizbeach, inside the Mishkan. You can't put it on the outside Mizbeach. And we're going to bring flour and oil, and we're going to bring kalim, and so Moshe's like, you can't do these things. And they said, check with the Kodesh Baruch Hu, and he says, yeah. And every single day, a different nasi. First one, of course, was Nachshon ben Aminadav from Yehuda. And every day, a different shevet, the nasi of that shevet, would bring special korbanos in order to dedicate the Mizbech. Ask Rashi, based on the Gemara, how could you bring ketores? How are you allowed to bring a chatas? How are you allowed to do these things? And he answers, Hora'as sha'ah. It was an emergency. Emergency? What was the emergency exactly? Because when it came to building the Mishkan, the nesi'im said, listen, we're in charge. You let all the people give what they're going to give, and we'll make up the difference. I got a blank check over here. I'll cover whatever. Yeah, let everybody give whatever they're going to give, and we'll come in. Well, don't worry, Moshe, we got your back. We'll fill in whatever's left. And when the process was done, there was nothing to give. They were totally left out of the process. So Kodesh Baruch Hu let the clouds drop the jewels that they needed so that the people could bring the jewels, and this way the nesi'im would have something to do. But all they were nosim. All they were schleppers. That's not what a leader is supposed to be. A leader is supposed to lead. I had a poster when I ran NCSY, someone got me that said, lead, follow, or get out of the way. A leader is supposed to lead. That's their job. The nesi'im are supposed to lead. They're supposed to be in the front. What do you mean you want to wait and see what's left and we'll help you out? I'll give you a sit back. I knew a shul. There was a very wealthy person. And he was basically sponsoring the shul. And he used to tell them every year, if there's a shortfall, let me know and I'll cover the budget. So this one guy in the shul refused to give any money. He says, I'm not giving it to the shul, I'm giving it to this guy. He can afford it. Whatever I don't give, he's going to pay. So he needs my money? Doesn't need my money. He's doing very fine. It was interesting concept. But the nesi'im felt like, we'll help you out, as opposed to understanding that we have a schus. I one time was not officially achrai, but I had a sense of achrayus. We had made a Ma'ariv minyan. The Ma'ariv minyan was made in the summer when it was in the middle of a heat wave. And the main minyan davened someplace where there was no air conditioning. And we had another small shul that did have air conditioning, and I was one of the people who pushed for, let's daven in the shul where we have air conditioning as opposed to going outside and getting heat stroke. Well, what's the point? So we started this minyan at a different time. And then we moved into the winter, and it became harder to get a minyan. And be certain people would show up right on time. It was an 8:45 minyan, 8:44. Certain people were sitting there waiting. And there were other people, if you called them up, they would come up. Now you understand that means that they didn't daven Ma'ariv. Now if you called them, they would come. They'll do you a favor. I've seen this to be true. I don't know if there's a makor for it or not, but I've seen it to be true, that there's a special mitzvah to be among the Asar Rishonim. And I've been at Minyanim. We have 8 people, 9 people, and you're kvetching to get those last 1 or 2 people. And as soon as you have a minyan, and you start Ashrei or B'hurachum, 3 more people walk in through the door. As if they're not zoicha to be part of the Asar Rishonim. Why? Because they didn't want to be there. Because if you want to be there, you're the first one there. You want to participate. You don't want to miss out. I'll give you an example. There was a very popular movie came out, I think, 1977. It was called Star Wars. It was considered a big step forward. The technology at the time was, Spielberg and Lucas got together. It was a big hit. Big hit. And they came out with a sequel. The sequel was The Empire Strikes Back. And this was also considered groundbreaking because it didn't have a happy ending. It ended with everything bad. And then the third movie was basically the first movie again, because if it ain't broke, why fix it? You know what I mean? And, the first movie they have to blow up the Death Star, and the third movie they have to blow up the Death Star again. And they did such a good job the first time, okay. But that was it. It was fine. So then George Lucas, without Steven Spielberg, decided to make 3 prequels. There are many people who aren't even gurish them. That was so terrible. I don't know. I saw the first one in 1977. I was a kid, but a friend of mine who was a Trekkie, as it happens, dragged me to a place in Manhattan. Says, you have to watch this, They had no advertising at the beginning. It was, you just had to know that it was something choshev, yeah. Anyway, so they came with these 3 prequels. I had a friend who was a Trekkie. He dragged me to the original Star Wars, a theater in Manhattan. And Star Wars was all word of mouth. They hadn't advertised. He says, you have to see this. This is groundbreaking. I said, fine. I was a kid, yeah. And I was always easily bullied. I lived in L.A. I was on a date in Disneyland. This girl said she wanted to go to Disneyland. And I hate roller coasters. I cannot handle them. I read later in Scientific America that people with ADD can't handle roller coasters because they're always on a roller coaster. So a friend of mine had taken me there when I first came to LA. He says, oh, this new thing opened. It's called Space Mountain. So I figured it's like a, trip to Mars. I went to Disneyland in 1968 with my family when it just opened, They had this thing, Trip to Mars. You sit in the chair moves around a little bit. They show you a film, something like that, yeah. So it was a rainy January weekday when I had just gotten there. And he's literally pulling me by the arm, and we're going through. And I'm passing signs. Pregnant women don't go on this ride. I was like, what did that say? Nothing, keep going, And it says, people with bad hearts shouldn't take this ride. I said, well, what is that? What was that? No, Anyway, we get in, sit down. I said, this is a roller coaster. He says, oh, it's the greatest thing. Because it's not just that it goes 100 miles an hour backwards. It does it in the dark. I was like, oh. I just held on. And I said, Hashem, please get me through this alive. I won't do this again, please. Anyway, so I'm on a date. And she's like, oh, let's go on Space Mountain. I was like, I really don't like to go on roller coasters. She goes, why, are you afraid? You afraid? I said, no, I'm not afraid. I just, Anyway, it was a longer line. We're passing the signs, people with hearts, people with... And I'm sweating. I was like, I really don't want to do this. She goes, oh, if you're too afraid, Finally, I passed the sign that says, last chance to exit. I said, I really don't want to do this. And she says, all right, if you're afraid. I said, I'm terrified. But the fact that I was bullied all the way up until that point says a lot about me, who I was. Anyway, so these prequels came out, and I happened to be speaking in Los Angeles. And the person I was speaking about, he says, come, you must see something. Now, the movies premiered in a place called Grauman's Chinese Theater. This is a iconic movie theater in Los Angeles. Yeah, for decades, stars put their handprints in the cement outside and signed their name. It's like a big deal. Yeah. He says, you have to see this. There's a line of people camped out on Hollywood Boulevard. This is before they had the homeless problem. And these people weren't homeless. They chose to live in a tent on the street for weeks so they could be the first people to go in line and get the tickets to see the Star Wars prequel. For us. Why? Because they wanted to be the first, because they were excited, because it was so important to them. That was their attitude. Lahavdil. The nesi'im? They're not going to camp out on Hollywood Boulevard. They're going to sit in their tents and they say, listen, give me a call when you need me. And I'll come in. How much you need? No problem. I'll cover the rest. Don't worry. We got your back. Be fine. Yeah. You ever see these matching funds campaigns? I never understood it. Person's like, we will match all the money that you give. It's very popular. But why? Why don't you just give the money? So they say, well, it's an incentive. This way a person feels like every dollar that he gives, he's really giving double. Okay. But don't you want to give? What happens if no one needs your money? What if they raise all the money they need? You don't get to give any. Okay, so I've never seen a Jewish organization yet that won't take your money if you really ask them nicely. But the idea is, why don't you want to be first? So the nesi'im turned around and they were like, what happened? What do you mean? You don't need us? Kodesh Baruch Hu dropped the gems from the sky. He says, yeah, you can bring this. Like, oh, okay, well, we brought the gems. Thank you very much. Thank you. It came from the clouds. You picked it up and brought it up. Very nice. And there was a very important lesson there. The lesson is, maybe we're the ones who missed out. Maybe we're the ones who didn't have the opportunity. we think that, we're doing everybody a big favor. And suddenly you realize, no, we don't need you. We don't need you. You have a chance to participate. You have an honor to participate. So when they went to put up the Mishkan, the nesi'im said, okay, we learned our lesson. We're going to go first. We're going to bring the first korbanos. Each one of us is going to represent our shevet. It's a fascinating Or Chaim HaKadosh that goes through. Every nasi brought the same thing. But he says each one brought it with different kavanas. Each one brought it on behalf of their shevet to represent what it was that they wanted to give. But they said, okay, how's the expression go? The way you make good decisions is from experience, and the way you get experience is by making bad decisions. So they learned from their experience, and they said, not this time. This time we go first. And we're not going to just bring a korban. We're going to bring a little of everything. And each thing is going to have deep meaning, but we're going to give everything that is possible to give. Why? Because we're going to show that we want the schus of being able to participate. And how many times do people look at a situation and think, fine. The Chazal say it. We all know it, and I assume we all believe it. Yeah? Tzedakah matzil min hamaves. Tzedakah saves you from death. My brother went to Scheinberg once. He wanted a bracha for Parnasa. He says, there's only one thing, give tzedakah. Give tzedakah, that Kodesh Baruch Hu will send you bracha. That's where it comes from. Give tzedakah. Tzedakah is life. Tzedakah is all these wonderful things. So when you see an ani, do you feel like, oh my goodness, what a wonderful opportunity this is? Or are we like, oh my gosh, another one? Okay, human nature. Human nature. I'm not trying to be flippant about this. All of us have a situation where we're less than eager to part with our money and part with our things. Yeah, that's human nature. I'm not denying it. But you understand that when that happens, if we really believed it, we would jump at the chance. I heard a story, I don't know if it's true, but I'm not Pesach Krohn. Thought I wouldn't get that one in, would I? Yeah. This I know for a fact. Chaim Kreisworth was very involved in Hachnosis Kala. And everybody knew. When he would come to Artscroll, there would be Yerushalmis out the door, because they knew that he would help you make your chasana and do whatever he could to help you. And the story goes, this is the way I heard the story, is that his daughter was sick, and he went to the stipler. And the stipler said to him, right? And gives the list. And it says, Bika Cholim, Hachnosis Kala, Halvayis Hames. And said the stipler, what separates Bika Cholim from becoming Halvayis Hames? Hachnosis Kala. That's what the stipler told him. And he got involved, and his daughter got better. So do we sense it's an opportunity? Or, okay, if they need me, I'll help out. Are we jumping to be involved? The Mishkan, if you understood what the Mishkan was for us as a Jewish people, it's a schus for us to be able to participate. So, of course, today we have a Mikdash Ma'at. We have bate nesi'os. There were times where it was considered a schus for the women to wash the steps of the shul, to clean the shul. What a wonderful opportunity. In Kelm, they used to auction off the right to sweep the Beis Medrash. Auction it off. I walk into Bati Midrashim today, and to Bati Knesios that have people learning there. Okay, I'm old. My son always says to me, Abba, you don't get it. And it's true, I don't get it. It's true. I'm old and I'm cranky and I have a different standard than most people, young people today. But I'm old. I remember when there used to be Jewish music. That's how old I am, So you walk into the shul, svarim all over the place. No one bothers to put back a sefer. Coffee cups, dirty tissues. You come in the morning to daven. Go in the back room. Yeah, cake crumbs all over the place. No one bothered putting the milk back in. Someone made themselves a coffee and the coffee spilled on the table. No one bothered cleaning it up. That's our mikdash ma'at. So somebody will take care of it. I'm sure somebody will. When I was running NCSY, I was doing a Shabbaton, and it was a shul where, even though the minhag in Klal Yisrael is that after you do Hagbah, so someone holds the Sefer Torah, holds it close to them. There are those shuls that have this little stand. They stick the yodos into these two holes, and it stands there. I remember Mordechai Rotman, who today is the Rosh Yeshiva Melech Torah, was there, and he was fuming. And he said to me, I'm going to go up and take the Sefer Torah and hold it, because that's what you're supposed to do. How could you just take a Sefer Torah and stick it over there? Nobody wants to hold the Sefer Torah? It's not a schus to hold the Sefer Torah? I convinced him not to because I didn't want to make a big fight. But, the sense of kavod that we see when we talk about a shul, we have to look at it as a schus and an opportunity to be able to participate. So, when we have an opportunity to help, make the minyan, build the shul, keep things clean, be masuda, don't wait and see what needs to be done after they're done. You should be the one who jumps up and does it. Listen, if you can't, you can't. Can't, you can't. Rabbi Shiller, the Shiva of Or Samech, he told me once that he had a meeting with a very wealthy person and he gave him a small check. And he said to him, I once met a very, very poor old man. He didn't have money to pay his bills. And he said, but Rabbi, I want to help you. And he wrote me a check for $18. And I put it in my pocket right next to my heart. Of course, I knew what went into that check. And he looks at this rich guy and says, I'm going to put you a check right there too. Yeah. Not everybody's zeicha. Not everybody's zeicha. Sometimes when I give somebody a ride, at the end they say, Tiskel mitzvahs. I say, isn't that the greatest bracha in the world? I should be zeicha to do mitzvahs. We should be zeicha to build the Mishkan. We should be zeicha to be able to build a shul, to be able to make a makam Torah, to participate in it. Let's not miss out on that opportunity. Okay, and now we come to the question and answer section of our program. Yechiel Freedman asks, if a boy is learning well by himself from an Artscroll mishnayos with translation, is it good or is it better to get a chavrusa? Okay, one of the Yesara Harugei Malchus was chutzpah and meturgaman. Now, in the time of the Mishnah, a meturgaman, even in the time of the Gemara, a meturgaman was somebody who was basically a human microphone. The Rav would say the shir, and this guy would repeat it. Yeah, 1975. 75, 76. I'm trying to remember when. This show came on, called Saturday Night Live, and they used to do the news. And they'd say, now the news for the hearing impaired. They had a little window there. And the guy would say, today in the news. And the guy would go, today in the news! The developing story. The developing story! That was a meturgaman. The meturgaman would scream it out so everyone could hear it. But the meturgaman basically is saying, yeah, the Panich Rav spoke for about 5 minutes in Yiddish, and a lot of people didn't understand Yiddish. And so the Rav got up and spoke for 20 minutes. And the Panich Rav says, I didn't realize I said so much. There must be more words in English. Chutzpah meturgaman means that a translation is, by definition, a little bit of a chutzpah. Because I'm giving my own twist on it. I may have mentioned this once upon a time. My brother-in-law, Dovid Lichtman, he referred to the Targum Onkelos as a rendering. It's a much better word than translation, because it's not a translation. It's a parish. And that's why Rashi will often quote the Targum as a parish. Because every translation is, by definition, a commentary. And that's why a meturgaman, if he adds his own words, it's by definition a little bit of a chutzpah, because that's not what I said. So the beauty of Artscroll, whether it's an Artscroll Siddur or an Artscroll mishnayos or an Artscroll Gemara, is it's an aid. Some people would say a crutch. And I think that's okay, because a person who has trouble walking definitely should have crutches. Better than falling down. But it's not the same as being able to do it on your own. You can't appreciate something unless you're seeing it in the original. And everyone who's learned Gemara, or even a Mishnah, you know that there's so many different possible ways of understanding it. So a translation, by definition, is limiting it. And that's why it says that when they translated the Torah into Greek, it was as terrible as the day the luchos were broken, because the Greek couldn't hold it. So Moshe Shapiro explained once what that means. He says, look, the first luchos were made by Hashem, so the Torah is infinite, and it could hold an infinite Torah. The second luchos were made by Moshe, and they were not infinite. They were man-made, and they couldn't hold everything. So the Torah was shrunk. When you translate the Torah into Greek, you're giving it a rendering into a different language. There's no way to capture what's there in the original. So it is always better to learn something in the original. That's for sure. As an aid, wonderful thing. If you need it, wonderful thing. But that should never be the end goal. The Gemara stresses the importance of learning with a chavrusa. Now, if I'm learning a translation of the Mishnah and I understand what's written there in the English, do I need a chavrusa? For what? For us to read it together? When you read a real Mishnah in the original, when you learn a piece of Gemara in the original, a chavrusa looks at it a different way than you do. It opens up new understandings, different ways to do it. I had a chavrusa when I was one point, and we would learn at night. And I remember we were in the middle of a taisvus, and we were really trying to figure out pshat, and I go, I have pshat. And I launched into a very impassioned explanation. And he nodded along. At the end, he said to me, You convinced me. Did you convince yourself? I said, no. I said, then let's look at it again. I didn't know that I was so transparent because I really thought that I had brought up the right amount of fervor. But so there's a tremendous advantage when you're living with somebody else. So if I'm reading it, i.e., do I need a chavrusa to read an English book, a Torah English book? Stem not. Yeah. So if I'm just reading it through in the English, do I need a chavrusa for that? Not necessarily. But you have to know that cannot be the end result. I said this once and somebody came over to me and they said, what do you mean? I finished Shas 2 times with the Artscroll Gemaras. I said, very good. But you understand, that's not called learning Gemara. And don't get me wrong. Sometimes it's an agadata, and I want to look it up because I'm not familiar with the words. My conversational Aramaic isn't up to scratch. And I just look it up. And you just keep turning pages. Because it's so user-friendly, Amud Beis. And you just keep turning. You know what I'm saying? Turning. And there are charts. I made up a whole chart once in Daf Yomi. And all the Artscroll people laughed at me at the end. They said, it's right here. They have charts. They have pictures. Yeah. Pop-ups, Mazes. Can you help them, Raglim, find their way back to Eretz? Okay. It's user-friendly. It is. When I was growing up, we only had the Sansino. Very few words were actually in English. Most of them were in Latin or Greek. A priori reasoning, ipso facto. E pluribus unum. I don't know. Somebody said once, I had the Sansino translation. It was easier to learn Aramaic. So Artscroll is so user-friendly. That's 100% true. It can never be the end result. It's a tool. It's a means, but that shouldn't be what your end goal is. So if you're just reading the English, I don't know if you need a chavrusa for that, but should that be the end goal? I don't think so. Anonymous asks, why do we say Be'ezras Hashem and Hashem help me and Melech Oizer? He is much more than just Oizer. Yeah. So, says Rabbi Yaakov Emden, you say in Shemona Esrei, Melech Oizer u'Moshia u'Mogain. He says those are 4 levels of bitachon. If you have a certain amount of trust in Hashem, he'll be like a king who has an overall supervision of his kingdom to make sure that for the most part his citizens are being taken care of, and he will do a general hashgacha on you. If you have more bitachon, Oizer, he'll actually help you. He'll help you. And people who don't appreciate that they need Hashem's help, the old expression goes, needs the most helpable. As the Gemara says about a character who might be Bar Kochba. It's discussion. But when the battle is about to begin, he says to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, don't help me, just don't hurt me. And they found him at the end of the battle. He got bitten by a snake. You need hashgacha just to get through the day. You need Hashem's help just to get out of bed in the morning, not to get hit by a truck. You have no idea how many times HaKadosh Baruch Hu is looking out for you and protecting you. Gemara Chagiga says that even when there's hest upon him, HaKadosh Baruch Hu still keeps his hand over us to protect us. So, any person who thinks they can make it in this world without Hashem's help is being foolish. Not to acknowledge that. Moshia means what? He saves you. He saves you. Sometimes I don't need help. Sometimes I need actual salvation. Yeah. You gotta save me here. I don't know what to do. And then, if you have enough, he's mogain. What does that mean? That means even if you do things that are against your own best interest, you make seriously bad mistakes, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will shield you from the results. Example, Mogain Avraham. Avraham allowed himself to be thrown into a kibshin ha'esh, a fiery furnace, rather than deny Hashem. As a rule, you should never go into a fiery furnace. It's very hot. You can get killed. Yeah? As the late Jackie Mason once said, be careful driving home, because I heard that there's a person who was hit by a car every 3 minutes. I don't know who this person is, but one day he's going to get himself killed. So, sometimes you don't go into a kibshin ha'esh. You're going to get yourself killed. And Hashem was Mogain. He protected him from it. So, those are the different levels. But is Hashem much more than that? Of course. That's why the Gemara says, Hakel hagadol higibor v'hanora. So one guy is going on. Hakel hagadol hagibor v'hanora v'ha'adir. He just gives a whole bunch of list of descriptions. When he's done, so the Amora says to him, that's it? You covered everything now? Now you describe the Kadosh Baruch Hu? The only reason we say Gadol Gibor V'Hanara is because Moshe Rabbeinu said it. Otherwise, we wouldn't say that either. And that's why the way Shemona Esrei goes, and in Mitzvah Hashem, after Pesach, when we start our Tefillah series in Mitzvah Hashem, we'll be going over lines so we understand them. We say Hakel Hagadol Hagibor V'Hanora Kel Elyon. And he's above all of these praises. Of course, Hashem is above anything that we could understand. This is the world, and we describe how we understand Hashem in this little place called the world. And then there's Hashem in his essence. And that's why we say, Atah Kadosh, V'Shimcha Kadosh. You're holy in your essence. V'Shimcha Kadosh, the name of Hashem that he used to create this world, which is all that we understand. We know that that's holy, but Hashem, big K Kadosh, Hashem, infinite with a capital I, we can't really grasp that. It's beyond us. So yeah, he's much more than that, but everything that Hashem does for us, we have to recognize. It's the famous Musar Shmuz. Rachel Imenu is crying, she wants a child. If I don't have a child, I'm dead. Well, what's my point in my life? And finally she has a son, and she says, Baruch Hashem. Says Rashi. Now when anything breaks, I got someone to blame it on. So say the Bali Musa, that's what you wanted a kid for? Somebody to blame things on? He says, no. Even that chesed that HaKadosh Baruch Hu did for me. All right, one more. Anonymous asks, what do you think about the delayed onset of maturity nowadays? Why is it, and what can be done about it? How can we help our children mature? The first thing that we can do is set an example. I always say that kids nowadays are at a disadvantage because they've never seen an adult. They've only seen my generation. We never grew up. You know, there's a book called Dave Barry Turns 40, and he has a line there where he's a humorist. He used to write for the Miami Herald. He has a line there where he writes, now that you're 40, you begin to realize you have more in common with Ward and June than the beaver. Now, for those who don't appreciate the obscure reference, there was a television show called Leave It to Beaver about an eight-year-old boy. His parents were called Ward and June. At the age of 40, I have to begin to understand that I'm not an 8-year-old boy. But until then, it was Pasha. Yeah. Here in Artscroll, a young couple gets married, and one Shabbos they go to this parent, the other one they go to the other parent, and they go back and forth. So someone said to me, until when? I said, until their kids get married and they want to come to them. So now they have to first make Shabbos. Otherwise, they just schlep back and forth. You know, right? They never make Shabbos. Why should they? You know, go someplace else. To be able to feel a sense of responsibility, that's something you don't see today. But it's the whole door. When the car bombing went off in Beirut, Ronald Reagan, who was the last adult president, got on television and said, I'm the president of the United States. The buck stops here. I'm responsible for this, and I will take all the blame. When Bill Clinton lied under oath, which is a felony, his defense was, it's not my fault. They shouldn't have asked me the question. You understand? If they hadn't asked me the question, then I wouldn't have lied. So that's where we are. Nothing's my fault. Maturity means to take responsibility for who you are and what you've done. And today, how do we help our children be adults? So first of all, remember, you're fighting the whole world, fighting all of society. First thing is, kids should have chores from the time that they're very young. And you find there's always one parent who feels like, oh, what do I want to give them stuff to do? Why do they have to do things? Well, I grew up, of course I had chores. Both my parents worked. And it was understood. Today you could see kids sitting on the couch and the cleaning lady is like, could you lift your legs so I could vacuum under you? And they're like, okay. It's like, could you take out the garbage? It's like I'm a slave around here. It's our fault because we didn't give kids responsibility. Every kid should have chores. When they're little, it might be something simple. But the very fact that kids throw all their toys around and then the parents clean it up, a kid doesn't even learn to put his own toys away, or to pick his clothes up off the floor. You see kids walk in, they drop their bag, they drop their coat, drop it on the floor, and they run off and do whatever. And the mother picks it up, or the cleaning lady picks it up, or somebody else cleans up. So if you don't give a person responsibility, and understand, you're not doing them any favors, because then they grow into adults who get married and expect everybody to do everything for them. So you have the wife who thinks my husband should be doing everything, the husband thinks my wife should be doing everything, and the two of them are standing there snickering at each other, because nobody learned to take responsibility. Get up and do it. Everybody should learn how to cook, regardless of gender identity. Everyone should learn how to cook. Everyone should learn how to sweep. Everyone should learn how to do dishes. These are not really highly trained skills. No one's asking you to become an assassin for the Mossad. Learn how to take a sense of responsibility. And when we were cleaning for Pesach, my kids, many of them still have some fond memories. Because when we would turn over the kitchen, so we'd all put on our junkiest clothes, and we would bleach, before we would do everything, we would bleach all of the counters and all of the cabinets, etc. And then everyone knew I would do the sponger. Some of my kids even volunteered, but I would do the sponger. I'd have a bucket with detergent and bleach, and I'd get down on my hands and knees and do every part of it myself to make sure I got in every corner and everything. And that was Pesach, the final big sponger. That's when you knew that, we were Pesach, yeah. And then the next day, I'd always have some kid, holding the boiling hot kettle as I'm going around with the burning hot rock to kasha the counters before I cover them. To which somebody asked me, if you kasha them, why do you cover them? I said, I don't know if I did such a kashering job that was so good. He said, well, then if you cover them, why do you kasher it? I said, I don't know if I did such a good covering job. But there's nothing like boiling water, steaming, falling all over the place. I always have somebody whose job it is afterwards to wipe up, by the drawers where it would drip into it on the things, Oh. And that was after the big sponges. So then we had the post, So yeah, I had kids who would jump in and help. It was very exciting. And when people have chores, they feel good about themselves. They feel like they're giving and not just taking. And most people want to be givers. So one of the best things that you can do is to give them responsibilities, give them things to do, because they feel better about themselves that way. And I remember one of my brothers just got his license, and he was kind of nervous. My father had a store in downtown Brooklyn, and he had to send out some deliveries. He was a florist. And he says to my brother, he goes, "Oh, you got your license," and he tosses him the key to his car. He says, take a kid with you, and, here's the route, deliver these flowers. And my brother just had his license. He's going to drive in Brooklyn. He was white. He was shaking as he walked out the door. My father turned back to the counter. He was cutting the flowers, And after my brother left, I was in the store. He turns around and goes, "Oh, God, I hope he'll be okay." But he wanted to teach him to take responsibility. At some point, you got to stand up and, do what you got to do. Okay, so that's it for this episode. If you want to find out more about the show, you can go to my website, RabbiOrlofsky.com. You can leave a comment. You could sponsor an episode. You could still sign up for the Tefillah series or any of my other online shiurim. You could listen to any of our music. You could listen to other shiurim that I have up on the website that is not part of the podcast. And that's it. This is Dovid Orlofsky, and this has been the Rabbi Orlofsky Show.
It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Torah and Simcha, ready to go. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Knowledge and wisdom will help you grow. Lots of fun in every episode, and we don't have to rhyme. No, we don't. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show on RabbiOrlofsky.com. Torah anytime, YouTube and more. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Torah and Simcha, ready to go. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Till next time, till we meet again, it's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show.